Hello, everybody. Well, actually, could you guys do me a favor and just say hi?
Hi.
Hello.
Great. Hey, everybody. How's
Greetings.
that was awkward. How's everybody doing on this fine Tuesday on our bi-weekly dev stream? My name is Matt, and with me is HB and Mark. Uh, Missing from the stream is KFC. He'll be back next week. Max, sorry. I don't. I am never not gonna call him KFC. It's always just gonna be KFC. He's KFC to me. It's KFC to you. We have got this time. I'm not on vacation, so I'm not going to be as just kind of like sitting here and running the stream. We have got some stuff for you today. Mark, why don't you talk a little bit about? Give us a little stream preview.
Yeah, so we are stuck in an awkward situation right now. The thing with our update schedule is for the big updates, they're planned kind of like far in advance, and we sort of set a solid date. So for update 37, that's what we did, and it's much more structured. For the updates that are in between the large updates, we sort of are flexible with them, and we kind of like to go with the flow. We sort of see when a war might end, and we pick a good time. But in this case, it was sort of like um, not quite enough time to wrap up the current update. But if we waited, it would be a whole nother war. So we decided instead to speed things up slightly, not by too much, maybe by I would have liked maybe like another day or so. But so right now we're just sort of under a bit of a pressure situation to get update 38 out the door. But luckily, update 38 is even though there is a lot of new content, most of the effort was actually spent on fixing bugs and such. It was almost already ready on its own, if that makes sense. And surprisingly, yesterday I looked. I'm totally jinxing myself, but I looked at the bug list specific for update 38, and it was I was like, wow, we fixed most of those bugs there. Now, this isn't all the bugs in our bug tracking system. This was just the one scheduled, to be clear, for update 38. So, like for everyone starts saying, hey, you guys have lots of bugs still. Yeah, that's true. I'm talking about specifically update the bugs that were scheduled for update 38. So we're going to get the test released out in resistance phase after the stream, and then the full release will come tomorrow when the war starts at 12 p.m. Noon Eastern time is when the next war and the next update is coming out, and there's new content, changes to the tech tree, there's game balance. But there is one thing I did want to talk about. Speaking about the bug fixes, there was a post on Reddit a few days ago that was mentioning. I for, I forgot exactly the words, but there was a meme posted that was making fun of the fact that we we don't instead of fixing bugs, um, we're adding more vehicles, right? And I was actually glad that post was made because I got an opportunity to make a reply, which I felt was very helpful for some at least. And I did wanted to sort of reiterate what I said there. I guess first of all, as a player of many games, I totally understand that sentiment. Like I'll be playing a game that I've been playing a game for a year, and I'm like, why don't they fix their bugs? Why are they adding more guns or something, right? like in a game I'm playing, don't add more guns, fix these bugs. And the truth of the matter is, in game development, many times the opportunity cost of working on content isn't fixing bugs. It's actually two entirely different things. Um, and depending on how the development pipeline is actually set up, it can be very there could be like a huge contrast between those two things. So as an example for us, our vehicle pipeline system is very decoupled from the code side now. And like HB can like he knows about this. This is especially a bunch of the work we put into update 37, which allows the animators, the modelers, the game designers to make entire vehicles with practically zero programming effort, right? So we're adding new vehicles now, But when we add those vehicles, it doesn't mean that we added them and then the trade-off was we couldn't fix the bugs. In fact, the majority of update 38 was actually spent on fixing bugs. The programming team was spending most of their time on fixing bugs. So what happens is, if the other half of the team wasn't working on vehicles, they'd be sitting around doing nothing. It's not like they'd be, I don't know, unless modelers suddenly learn how to program.
Yeah, somehow I can suddenly fix like server related bugs. Then I guess I have some training I could do.
That's exactly it. So the trick is trying to balance the pipeline so that everyone on the team is productive, right? So I just wanted to make that clear. Now, that's not to say we're always scheduling things exactly perfectly as you guys want. Maybe sometimes we'll make a mistake and say, okay, we should have scheduled time on working on this thing instead of working on that. We certainly make these mistakes, and you know, it's not perfect, but a lot of times, like, it is two separate things. So I just felt that it'd be helpful to explain that.
I think that's a nice look behind the curtain, a little bit.
I think that every time that we explain how game development in general works is always a positive.
Me too.
The more people that understands how it works, more people that understands what cannot be achieved in a certain time.
And to be honest, there are a lot of situations where like I would love to be able to fix some of those like hard bugs so that like I can help. But it's just like we have different skill sets. Like that's you know, it's the same reason why like programmers wouldn't start doing like visual effects work randomly or fix those bugs because it's just not their skill set. So it is a really good distinction in like how the different like departments per se are like compartmentalized. And we're pretty loose actually.
Yeah.
You know, there are other companies, bigger companies that are really like, you do this one thing and this is the only thing you do. So
yeah, between me and Matt, it would be 8 different departments.
Anyway, let's move on to community highlights, shall we?
Yes, let's do this. So for the people that don't know, community highlights is actually a blog post that happens at the end of the week, which all the things that the community does, all the cool things, like all the videos that they make, all the artwork, all the writings, all the text, it's all compiled by Max at the end of the week. And then in this Devstream, we just do a little bit of a preview. People complain that like it's my time to shine as a weeb. But Max has a lot of his hand on it. So if you see a lot of anime, it's also on him. Anyway, let's just check it out. What do we have? Oh, cool. So I haven't seen much of this time, unfortunately. This one we have this. This is a pretty cool digital painting by RG. On the left there, the gunboat.
Oh yeah, I saw this the other day and was like, oh shit, that's really unique looking. It's almost like very graphic.
It's interesting because very rarely we see vibrant colors in the illustrations, just because of the theme and the way we portray our game itself. We very rarely see like these bright blues and bright like warm rock colors. I mean, that boat is so going down with all those rocks. But other than that, this is pretty neat.
Like when I see that picture on the left, Matt, what I see is like a bug report to fix those rocks.
Yeah.
So that...
Boat stuck. Please unstuck.
Yeah. Boat stuck. Fix those rocks. All right, why don't you let me know, HB, whenever you want me to.
Yeah, and then we also have the one on the right by Florence Elman. This is something that I had never seen this before, and I haven't seen this illustrator before. So I'm sorry if I've been slipping on it. It looks awesome. Like, it's really well done. I love it almost feels like when you're doing character design, when you're designing almost anything for any games and animation, whatever, you do rotations. So you have the same character basically in the same pose. It's usually a much more neutral pose, and then you rotate it like front, side, back, and like 3/4, so you can see, like, have a better idea, particularly if you're like transferring from character design to 3D. This is a process that we have to make. This almost feels like it, because it's like the same pose in 3 different directions, and it's not easy to do. So props for Florence. That's really, really, really cool.
I mean, like you said, those are like, when you're in school too. Those are like exercises that you have to do in order to get consistency. So that we can.
It's not exactly a
character.
Yeah, but you can tell it's the same guy. It's pretty cool. Next one. Oh yeah,
but I forgot about this.
It is just absolutely amazing. We've seen lots of Lego Lego creations of like our vehicles, and this is one of the best. Like they have always been amazing. Zerkin did it. He didn't use the Lego bricks. I almost asked him for the instructions so we could like buy the pieces and we could put it together in the office. But unfortunately, he didn't use the official Lego software because he didn't like. Unfortunately, the Lego pieces are all real, but the Lego colors they didn't have on the official Lego, so he had to use a different app. It looks dope. It looks so good.
They didn't have these colors.
Yeah, like
wild.
This is a color that exists in Lego, like this olive green, but not for all the types of pieces because like not all pieces come in all colors. Like for the more common ones, yes, but for this specific green, not all pieces that he needed to use come in this color. So he had to use a different software, and because of that, we couldn't have like a booklet that I could buy all the pieces from like Brickworks or something like that, so I could build it myself. But I was really excited to try because this is one of the this most like Lego looking like versions that I've seen, and I really love that he did the scene from like the top down camera perspective with the characters fighting. There's the medic, there is the guy with a rifle, there's the one with the revolver and the binocular, and then is the warden coming and to drop like a charge.
I think that's like a sticky bomb.
Is a sticky bomb? Yeah, it's sticky so bomb. Fucking good.
The warden is actually, it's a hint at the outfit system with the commander having a cap and the medic
having
medic helmet. It's super cool.
Man, I would that Aldovator just made a comment. If there's one like reskinning of our game that if we ever get the IP we will never do, but is to make a Lego version of Foxhole.
Yeah, that would be amazing.
Fucking amazing. I mean, spending so much time like building these vehicles in Lego form and like all the characters, that would be so fucking cool. Jesus.
I really like the shell.
Yeah, I was going to mention like the way he like did like the plume. Yeah.
Very cool.
Foxhole Persistent Brick Warfare.
Also, the bushes and flowers are also like on point. It's like little details that are
so well done.
That are very on point.
So we've seen like renditions of like our vehicles in Lego before, but I gotta say, I think this one takes the cake. Like just because he put it in the scene and everything, it's really well done.
Very cool.
Let's go to the next one. Yeah. Well, what can I say? Mummy, once again. I am an unabashed fan of Mummy. I think they make like the best like chibi things. I really like them like playing war with their tanks and everything. I think it's awesome. And then we have this one by Nero on the right. That I seen one when they were doing it, and it's just really well done. It's kind of like a scene of like, I don't remember what is the context. I think it's like the warden scientist trying to figure a way to find a solution for a problem in game and like failing, and then the warden just trying to like send him a message of like coming back with more news from the front line or something like that. It's just a really fucking awesome illustration. Really well done.
Cool.
Yeah. I don't know what this one is.
Well, maybe I'll just click it and we'll watch it.
Yeah. Because I didn't put this one in. Oh, it didn't work.
There we go.
Can you drop the sound a bit?
Yes.
You can leave it on. It actually works, but just probably drop it to about a quarter. Yeah, there we go.
It's a LT with a.
It's a pretty short video, actually.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe we'll just watch the whole thing. See what
Alright.
happens.
There's. Oh, I think our tank's got him.
Is this just? I think this is just like a
Ooh.
binocular view of like this tank battle.
Dude, this tank battle.
Yeah, this is awesome.
Wild. Oh shit. Their BT is crewed by all sergeants. The enemy one. Focus their light tanks first, and then kill the heavy tank at the end.
That is a really cool battle. Wow.
Yeah, it's actually
Oh,
not
look at
often
that spearhead.
to catch a commitment of tanks like this.
Yeah.
There's usually a lot of like inching back and forth. I mean, there's a little bit of that happening here as well, but in general, there was a big push at the beginning. So, that's one thing I would really like to see more of. And maybe this is a symptom of the current meta in the game, but it would be nice if there was more open field combat with tanks that wasn't just players being really conservative, just doing sort of like the inching back and forth at the front type of thing. But I understand why it is that way right now, and even in the times that I've played, um, especially in this last war, I also did that sort of thing as well. But the times when I have been in a fully committed tank battle, it's been really exciting, right? Maybe they don't last long enough. That's one of the issues, is that you commit yourself to a tank battle and it's over within just like in a matter of seconds, really. So, anyways, that's a long discussion.
Yeah, that's a long discussion.
I don't know why I started that discussion because I knew it was going to be long.
You know where it's going anyway.
I knew it was going, so I will back away from that right now.
Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, no, it's a cool. And now we're gonna go for development update. Thank you very much for everybody to contribute to the community highlights. So if you don't see your post in the actual blog post that happens at the end of the week, send it to me. Send it to KFC. Sorry, to Max. I have the same problem with that. And we might have just missed it. We will try to include it. There's some really cool stuff there. There's way more, and you can check it out at the end of this week.
Cool.
Thanks,
so,
HB.
Yeah, we're gonna move on to the development update, which almost everything in this development update has been spoiled in one way or another. But it's not a big deal. Yeah, like one was the timing that the dev branch had to come out before the dev stream, and then the other was some miscommunication. So some other things were leaked out this morning, but none of it was a big deal, and I think it's all a positive in the end. So even though you guys probably know mostly everything that's coming, I'm going to talk about it anyways.
Making our jobs easier. We don't have to even say anything.
Yeah.
We should just do this. You just
Yes.
like release this stuff to the community earlier and say whatever.
Right. So just gonna walk through the key features, changes, etc. coming to update 38, which is coming out tomorrow again. So the first thing is the mortar half track, which we talked about last stream. There isn't too much new to add to it. One thing is that we now settled on the 20 shell capacity in the inventory, and some of the feedback that we were hearing was that the with landing APC, you can also have a crew with mortars. So we wanted to add enough shells there that would at least make it roughly equivalent to a fully passengered APC, or at least like closer. And another thing that someone pointed out was that the actual model shows. So the original count was, I believe, like 7, and they were pointing out that the number of physical shells on the model itself was a lot more than that. So it didn't make sense that it can only hold that much. So we've
It's
changed
a
it to
fair
20.
point.
It is a fair point. It's definitely a fair point. So now there's more shells than what appear on the model. So hopefully that makes more sense. If we, if Foxhole was just a bit more higher fidelity game, I would actually like to hook up those shells to the actual number in the inventory. But it's not. It's just a bit past our threshold for this one. It is compatible with all the, the mortar shell types. Um, smoke, shrapnel, flare, and one more, which some of you guys might know about this, the armor piercing type, which was revealed this morning in I Saw Bear's update 38 video. Um, this was this change came in late. It wasn't in the original release for the dev branch, but it's something we added in as in part a short term. So I'm just gonna get into it since we're here, talking about the mortar AP shell. Um, it's let me just get all the points up here. So it's basically the mortar half track is almost like 2 vehicles. In the early game, it's the mortar half track that you probably thought it was. It's sort of um, a much like the handheld version, except that it's on a half track, which gives you like a lot of benefits. Um, first of all, when you get hit, you don't lose like your mortar tube, like it's still stuck on the vehicle. You're much more like heavily protected. You don't need that many players to carry all your shells, especially now with the increase of the inventory. But in the late game now, the armor piercing shell will actually turn it into a long range mobile AT platform. And this is a this is not a joke. It's pretty powerful, and there's a lot of talk about the colonials needing a late game anti tank weapon. Um, and I think in the long run, we're probably gonna go with. There's a whole bunch of other vehicles that we still have planned that I think will fill that role. But right now, at this current stage, we feel like this is gonna fill that role, uh, hopefully quite nicely. And then in the future, things are gonna continue to change. And this will be unlocked near the end. So the armor piercing shell specifically is going to be unlocked near the end of the item text tree on the colonial side. So this won't. Our goal is so that this, uh, almost like the AT colonial half track, so to say, won't really be available when there's things like armored cars. It's more available when the tanks start to roll out. So that's the mortar AP shell. Uh, moving on. We talked about this last time as well, so we won't spend too much time on it. But essentially, more tools to the builders. I think that in the dev branch, we've seen players build really crazy things like that um, bunker base on the right there that looks, I don't know what to call it, a octagon
It's like a captain's wheel.
captain's wheel, Sea of Thieves,
Yeah, it's like a ship
pirate
wheel.
ship themed bunker base. So that we already seen players use this flexibility to build all sorts of cool things. So super interested in seeing how this turns out in update 38. I feel like, as a side note, the bunker system and the trench system in general still, there's just so much more work to be done. The good thing is that the foundation of it is in there, like the hard part of solving the problem of how do you punch holes in the world and that whole hard part is done. And now we just have to do the fun part, which is to add more content on top of that, add more tools. Um, work on the quality of life, which I know I've read a lot of feedback on the quality of life here. So there's just so much more to work on. But the good news is that it's the fun stuff now. It's not the super tough technical challenges. So I'm hoping for the winter update coming at the end of the year is when we can focus some of our effort on that. Violation log, moderation tool slash features is something that we have worked on. There has been more than this. Over the last couple of weeks, we have put in more work on the moderation side of things in terms of features and tools, and the violation log is one of those. And basically, this is keeping a record of past violations so that it's something that players will be able to see. And um, one of the reasons why we're doing this is to make sure that there is this sense, there is this, uh, we rather try to like encourage players to engage in positive behavior so that um, this is not something that is going to be gone, right? So this would be like a permanent record if there is a violation, and also to just help gain some more like visibility on this sort of thing. Um, and there's going to be more. There's some other features that were also added that if there is a violation of the code of conduct and your account is suspended, we do show you the reason now, whereas before that wasn't there. And we're going to continue to work on these tools and features moving forward. So
Also,
moving on
just worth noting, KFC was banned 4 times in 30 minutes.
yeah, for harassment and cheating. So
Yeah.
that wasn't cool. So getting into game balance changes. First thing I want to talk about. So this was actually not in the release notes because this is more of a tech tree change. We're actually able to we treat the tech tree separate from the the updates now. So we don't have to update the game in order to update the tech tree, which is really good. So all the prototype costs are going to be cut in half. We got a lot of feedback about how it was too much grind to make a prototype, uh, so and that sort of thing. So we did cut all prototype costs in half. So I hope that's going to be helpful. Uh, Changes to the ballista. It's been hard to balance this one, and I know I'm aware of all the conversation that's been surrounding this. But one thing I want to say is it's been very tough to balance because we haven't really got a lot of testing in the war on this one, and in part because it obviously players have not been um, going to research it, and so. But what we did want to do is we still wanted to make an attempt on making some changes here, um, based on the things that we've been hearing, trying to do our best without proper data. So we made a couple of changes here. The range has been increased. Damage against some structures have been increased, and the inventory has also been increased as well. I actually saw players doing a bunch of testing about this one in the dev branch, and I think some players were very surprised at how much damage it deals. Like as you can see in this screenshot or in the animation here, it can one shot certain garrison houses, and these like tier 3 garrison houses. And that's not even like, and you can also even be a bit further out than what's shown in that screenshot there. And it can also um, it, it could do the same to gun turrets now as well, so you can one shot a gun turret. And I feel like a lot of the conversation around the damage on this one was unclear going into the last update, because there was a bunch of changes that were made at the last minute in the dev branch that might not have surfaced to any players. But it I guess our hope, at the same time, our hope is that we can get more information on this moving forward. We can continue to make more changes based on that. But at the end of the day, it's a player-driven game, and if players, if they continue to not want to use this, we'll just have to roll forward, make more changes, and see what happens, right? So the very point of the tech tree is that choice. So when something isn't chosen, it's not necessarily a broken thing in our eyes, right? So um, AT ammo damage has been decreased slightly across the board. So this affects the in-placed AT, field AT, abstract AT, Silverhand. Probably missed some stuff, but maybe not. In placed AT rate of fire was increased slightly to slightly compensate for that. Field AT rate of fire was also increased. We did hear a bunch of feedback about this being a little bit underpowered, so that changes in there as well. A couple of other changes that were made as well. All world team structures are now immune to friendly fire. So this one was put in place. So our goal with friendly fire has always been we want friendly fire because it's more immersive. But we start to feel that structures like factories and storage depots, it doesn't really add that much to that side of the immersion. You're not gonna be like, oh, it's so immersive that I missed my rifle shot and I accidentally shot the factory instead, right? Like, so, and at the same time, it does cause problems with things like griefing. So this is one of the times when we thought, okay, you know what? It's probably not worth it. Let's just turn off friendly fire. And it was already off on a bunch of structures anyways, like your town halls and things like that. So we just went ahead and turned it off for the rest of them. Hopefully this will be result in a smoother experience moving forward. And mass production factories preserve all orders when destroyed and rebuilt. So this one this one is interesting because I don't necessarily think that this was a broken thing. I think it was more that the mass production factory is a bit of a special structure where it's very long term. um, when and if you are a player that invests in this, there's not a lot you can do to if you invest in if you put an order to the mass production factory and you leave, there's not a whole lot you can do to prevent someone else from um, taking it down, destroying it, and then losing your orders, right? Like it'll happen maybe in like the middle of the night or something. And I know that happens in a bunch of other parts of the game, but the mass production factory, you can put a lot of investment into it, um, and we just felt that that sort of investment shouldn't be erased, especially when we want to push people into using the mass production factory more. We don't want to like discourage them. But having said all that, I do feel something that the game does need in future is for there to be a bit more granularity here. I feel like players should be able to do something like destroy a mass production factory and have it impact the enemy team. Just not impact it so severely that you may lose thousands of like RMATs worth of things. I do think there needs to be some sort of a mid ground there. And I hope that mid ground is something we can take a look at in the future.
Um, I just wanted to make a clarification because there seemed to be a fair amount of confusion on the chat in regards to one of the things that all world team structures are now immune to friendly fire. World structures are structures that are already in the map when you log in.
That's
They're
right.
not built by players.
That's
so
right.
factories and all that. But player built structures, like anything that a player can go and build, can still be destroyed. So no, people cannot grief by placing foxholes on the road anymore, and you can't destroy them, anything like that. But your factories and your refineries, they cannot be destroyed by your own team anymore.
That's right.
I hope that clears it up, just to make sure.
How does that, just as a question, just as like a follow-up question, how does that affect like bridges?
Bridges are not owned by teams, so they won't be affected by that.
Just for clarification.
Cool.
I think hopefully across the board it's almost something like you just don't notice because
Yes.
shouldn't
Yeah.
really, hopefully you shouldn't be getting friendly fire. Like,
Well, Matt, that's exactly why we did it, because it's already something that like doesn't never happens much naturally anyways. It's not like, oh, we accidentally friendly fired this factory and that was a cool story as a result. So and in fact, in a lot of cases we already print out a warning when there is friendly fire to actively discourage um, players who are trying to grief these structures. So we felt like the griefing case outweighed the, in fact, I don't even know what it really
What
had.
would be the tactical advantage of
again,
this
like
front?
the only thing
Yeah.
I can think of, like the only thing I can think of is if you're like your enemies are in like a garrison house, like holding out, and you destroy it on top of them. But that's like
Yeah, it
such a tiny percentage
Yeah.
chance that that's even going to
Well,
happen.
There's always a compromise on something, and the potential for griefing outweighed this more unlikely scenarios.
that's right. And there was, and there was always this little bit of loss. Like, it's kind of magical, right? It kind of takes away from the sandbox for sure. But again, these are the trade-offs, right?
Mhm.
So cool. Moving on to bug fixes. I just did want to touch on this because we did spend, like I mentioned at the beginning, the majority of the programming effort in this update was actually spent on bug fixes. So a couple of higher profile ones here. There were over 35 bugs fixed, which has been which is a really high number compared to the last couple updates, which isn't surprising. After the big updates, there tends to be more bugs to clean up. VSync doesn't work on borderless window mode. I know this was bugging a lot of players. This one
It was
is
very much bugging me. That was one of the things that drove me nuts.
yes, and I believe so. This should be fixed. And if you are still experiencing this problem after the patch, please let us know, because there might be more corner cases out there. But we think we nailed that one. Several vehicle physics bugs, some of them, including some of them that involved spinning out at the bridges, have been fixed, which was another one of those high-profile bugs that we heard about a lot. This third one here, I wanted to put it in here because this has been a long time, and a lot of times we hear the feedback. There's been bugs that haven't been fixed for months, and there is truth to that. So I'm really glad that you guys do raise that point. And this one has sat in our bug tracking system for a long time, because every time we came around to it, fixing it required a significant amount of a rework on how the internal logic worked. But we finally got the time to tackle this one, and it is finally fixed. So that's proof that eventually we do get to some of these, even though we probably can be doing a better job at it. That one's finally fixed. So I encourage you to check out the patch notes, because there's a bunch of other stuff that's also been fixed. So hopefully some of the bugs that have been affecting you are no longer there. Moving on to what's next. I want to hand this over to UHB in a moment, but what comes after? What comes after Update 38? Well, Update 38 is actually going to be split into two. It did, like I said, the release was slightly earlier than expected, and there were other vehicle variants that we wanted to get in, but they will actually make it into War 62. So the evolution of the tech tree will continue in the next war as well. That's not going to be stopping anytime soon. That'll be coming in a point release for Update 38. And HB, if you want to talk about Dead Harvest a bit.
Sure. So that harvest is coming back. It's gonna come back in October. It's gonna be different than what you guys seen before. Well, it's always different. But I just wanted to we actually debated a lot if we were going to do that harvest this year, and the reason is what it's written on the screen there. As we are getting closer and closer to 1.0, the code is maturing a lot. and that means that it's getting more complex and much more intermingled with, like, each feature is much more intermingled with each other. That means that making these one-off game modes is much harder. We can still do it, but it's on the expense, of course, of a lot of development time. And we really believe that right now it's probably not the moment to really go deep and make crazy changes to the code, that we might have to spend a lot of time also taking it out later or something like that for 1.0, or making the code unstable. So the reality is that I just wanted to set everybody's expectations. That Harvest will come back. We want to try to make a fun event for everybody. We want to make to. We've been doing this for like 3 years now, so it would be a shame if we didn't do it. But it will be a much more, how can I say, subdued event. It's not going to be as big, as expensive as everything else that we've done before, and it's definitely not going to be as different from the main game mode that we have. It's going to be basically a variation of what we have because of that, because we think that we don't have the time to really spend a lot of development time making sure that we are not screwing the code over for a 2-week thing, 1-week thing, 3-week thing, however it is. It doesn't seem like a very sane decision to do something like that. Anything else to add, Mark?
No, I think you basically said it all.
I will say the like sort of yearly story of Dead Harvest will continue.
Yeah, so hopefully, even though the gameplay is going to be a little more simpler, maybe we can make the lore part of it.
Yeah,
kind of as that.
It'll be pretty interesting to expand it a little bit in lieu of that, and put some stuff out there that really doesn't affect the game in as major of a way. So that'll be pretty cool.
So Dovachar asked, since we're in the topic, like, so it's going to be like the very first one, in which was much simpler, no? Like, so actually, that would be the most complicated thing to do.
That was actually the most complicated version.
Yeah, because hear me out. We understand that the game mode itself is simple, like the concept is simple, but the idea of introducing a mode that is completely separate from what we have going on right now. It's like on a completely different place with completely different code. Even though it's a simple mode on itself, is actually way more complex for us right now in the stage that we have our coding right now. So what is more likely that will be just a small variation on what we have, what you are playing right now. We're gonna try to do some things, but that's what I'm trying to say. Don't expect a different mode. Don't expect a completely brand new way to play. This is not what it's going to be this year. I just want to set everybody's expectation to that.
Great. Thanks, HB. And on to Q&A.
Cool. Everybody in chat, we're going to start answering some questions, so start asking them. And we have 2 that were given to us ahead of time, so I'm going to start with those. The first one comes from Minibar. He says, he sent this to HB. So he said, hi, HB. Not hi, Devstream.
Hi, Minibar.
Question for the Devstream. Oh, I closed it. Question for the Devstream. Which are the most important quality of life changes you want to improve, or what are the most known pain points for that? I'm going to kind of summarize. What are the quality of life changes that we're looking to improve upon?
The main ones.
The main ones. He says, kind regards from Germany, Minibar.
Yeah, it's a good question. I guess, so to start, logistics is always on the table, even though I believe that at the beginning of the year, we made huge strides in that department. If anyone was here before the spring updates, before the static crane, before you can actually dump container contents directly into refinery, it was 20 times more painful. So I think we've gone a long way in that department, but that can always use a bit more. There's always, I think, no matter what we do, players and ourselves will always feel like logistics always needs a little bit more quality of life. I don't think there's going to be some sweeping huge to like set expectations. I don't think there's going to be some like massive reworking of it, of the way logistics is anytime soon, at least. That was on the level of what we saw in the spring update. But there's always little things here and there I think can be improved. I think that base building needs some quality of life in some cases. Trying to build out a large base and have it all work out, I think is a bit on the painful side, and it does. I mean, I believe it works functionally, but there's a lot of quirks there. There's a lot of like little snags that you hit that you probably. Let me say this: it's probably more painful than it should be in some places, even though the overall thing is functional. And I hope that later this year we can try to get to some of those. Um,
So would you
yeah,
say that Logi is a quality of life thing, or is there like something else that just it's less game relevant?
less game relevant.
Like I don't know, changing the way the menus work or tutorials. Is there anything that is a little bit more more broad strokes that you think would be more the thing that
Um,
we want to touch up before we release?
I yeah, I'd have to go back to giant our giant list of things to do
It's so big.
to identify those like one-offs. There's a lot of one-offs, of course. Um,
I'll tell
like
you. I'll tell you one.
I mean, even as recent. No, I just want to cite out that
No,
like
go ahead.
as recent as the last update, we did get a lot of feedback on the map tooltips and viewing your reserve stockpile. So we did actually, if you look at the patch notes, we did put in a couple of quality of life sort of like one-offs there. So we're constantly working on the one-offs, but in terms of the larger things, logistics, just because we'll keep hearing about it no matter what happens, and base building because I think we just need to take a closer look at that at some point.
I was gonna say I have one, which is like corner aiming is one that's plagued us for like a really long time that I know we'd love to fix.
Yeah, is that even quality of life, or is
I
that
feel like
more
that's like vital. Maybe that's not quality of life.
Yeah.
Okay. So next question that we have lined up comes from Seed. Um. Thank you for taking the time. I would. I'm reading the beginning of a question that I don't need to read. Are there any plans to bring a physical version of Foxhole when it is reached 1.0 full release, like a collector's edition?
Probably not. That falls under the category of it's sounds like it'd be really cool. But I think for us with our studio size and all the things that we have to do, probably a physical copy is not very high up on that list. Even though, don't get me wrong, I think it'd be amazing. I have a huge collection of physical game boxes myself that I keep in my basement. And yeah, so I really like that sort of thing. But yeah, it's probably
What's the name of
most
that
likely.
company that makes physical copies of unreleased, like smaller digital games?
Is it like Indie Box or something?
No.
No,
It's
you know
like
which one?
limited run games.
Limited run games. Yeah,
Gotcha.
maybe if something like that comes up, like pops up, but I think that like just on our own, I think it's very unlikely we do a physical release.
All right. I've seen this question like spammed, so it, it's I so I'm just gonna ask it. It's from like a million people.
Hmm?
Will we have a drive-by shooting update, being able to shoot at the passenger seats of like open top vehicles and able to throw grenades at windows, etc.?
That was asked by a lot of people.
It was spammed the whole stream. That's why I'm. It's confusing.
For
But
like an hour.
That's the first I've heard of it. So so the the question is, will you be able to equip your some weapon while you're while you're in interior, or
in the
the open?
passenger seat of a vehicle, especially like open top jeeps, or will the commander be able to like throw grenades, like stuff like that?
Okay, I see.
So just like more complex shooting from passengers that might be
besides
possible in
just
like
using your
reality.
secondary,
Yeah.
Yeah,
besides
right now you can only shoot
your
small
secondary,
arms, like a secondary. Yeah.
yeah.
And if you're in the passenger of like a vehicle like that's just like a passenger slot, you can't necessarily shoot. So
Yeah.
I think the
Yeah.
idea is like, are we gonna like look at that?
I think probably not anytime soon. I don't think that's I think the reason why we don't allow primaries right now is because it sort of will just effectively allow you to mount to turn every vehicle into like an HMG such and such vehicle, which would be very strange. I think in terms of allowing players to shoot from uh, inside vehicles, like under the cabin, I kind of feel like that would undermine the purpose of the open top seats. So right now there's a nice gameplay distinction. We can say this is open top. It gives you more functionality. If they were the same, there'll be no gameplay reason to have some. There'll be no difference between sort of like the open top utility vehicle and the closed top utility vehicle, right? Um, I think the one thing that we probably might consider, but this is more of a we'd have to think about it, is moving maybe certain weapons don't belong in primary and we want to move them to secondary so that
Mm.
they can be used. Uh, I think that might so as some wild example of like something we are not planning to be clear, but is falls under that category would be like maybe submachine gun should be equipable in your secondary as an example, right? Um, but
Mhm.
again, we're not doing that. It's just that's an example of like what could potentially happen, right? Like that's sort of a change as opposed to just let a player use all their primary and secondary and like tertiary weapons um, from every seat everywhere. Yeah.
There's a few questions about Dead Harvest, and I'm just gonna kind of address it kind of generally by saying you'll learn more in the weeks to come.
Yeah, so if you're asking, I saw a couple of questions in regards what is gonna be, how it's gonna play. We're gonna discuss more details later. We're not ready to talk about it yet.
Yeah. It will to sort of set expectations. We probably will talk more about it. Um, not next stream, but the stream after is
Mm.
most likely when is the current plan, which could change, but that's currently what we're
Yeah.
aiming for. Yeah.
Any progress on the bridge revamp? Yes,
Yes.
but we're not ready to talk about anything more right now. I would say, but it's gonna be cool. Um, let's get a more in-depth question. I'm just gonna look at some of the newest ones here. So, I kind of a general question. When it comes to like population imbalance, have we thought of anything other than like the queues and long respawn times? Is there anything else that's like you've thought about or have been toying around with in your head in terms of like a design solution around that?
Yeah, we've thought about this a lot in the past. It's probably one of the most thought of parts of the game, and I think that in the past we have tried things like giving one side a resource boost, but I think at the end of the day, our goal is how do we get as many players possible having fun in the world conquest, right? Our goal isn't necessarily make things perfectly equally balanced and force people down these queues to make it perfectly balanced. That's not the goal, actually. And in fact, if we were to take that to a higher level, our goal has never been to make a competitive game, right? There are competitive aspects of it for sure. And it's a PvP game, but our ultimate goal isn't to make like a competitive game. Like, what's a really competitive game?
Like Rainbow Six.
Exactly, right? That's not our goal. So our goal is to how to get as many people having fun in the war as possible. How to make people feel like they're playing in this large scale war where hundreds of players are all working together and everything feels as player driven as it can be. Even though I know there are compromises there. Um, so from that standpoint, at our current stage, the queues and the respawn times, um, they're not ideal. But we found that by trying to balance it with using those two mechanisms and also keeping an eye on those things, we have a bunch of like monitoring tools that will make sure that we are notified if things get too severe. Um, we found that with those two mechanisms, we're able to have not too bad of an experience for the side that is Q, or at least we try to keep that amount of pain as low as we can, right? And then on the side that is out popped, we don't want their experience to be too bad either, right? So there's these two experiences, right? Like I've heard the arguments on both sides. I've heard like players that feel like they're out popped. They're just really angry because they feel like the game isn't being fair to them. I've heard arguments on the other side, which are, well, you should just, if you're winning, you should just let us win, right? But it's like, it sucks if one side's not having fun. It sucks if the other side's really not having fun. And what's worse, if both sides are not having fun, right? Which you 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 can't get to that state if you go too far. If the side if the queues are too long and the losing side is also just feeling like it's unfair, then like everyone loses, right? So our goal is, how do we balance these two things so that, sure, it kind of sucks to be winning in a queue, but how do we make the queue short enough that on average, not all cases, but on average, it's not so bad, right? And then how do we make it so that on average, the side that feels like their out pop doesn't feel like it's just this steep steamroll, right? And we're constantly tweaking the algorithms to try to find this balance. And it's something we're just gonna continue to work on moving forward, right? I think, yeah. So
That comes from Panzer 303. By the way, I forgot to I forgot to read their name. I think we got time for a few more questions since we did start late. Navardulb asks, will we ever see tier 2 watchtowers? The current ones have mayfly lifespans. Time spent finding and destroying them is really disproportionate to the time spent putting them up.
yeah, I think we will see in update at some point that works on the intelligent side of the game, which Watchtowers falls under that category. So I think we will see something along the lines of being able to upgrade your Intel infrastructure. We have prototyped and created tier 2 and tier 3 watchtowers internally, but we found that there wasn't really an interesting way to integrate them into the game yet. We don't want just these flat upgrades, these sort of steps you just have to do. Like if there's just 3 tiers, then it's just um, you know what's the point in ever making a tier 2 watchtower if there's a tier 3? If there's a tier 4 watchtower, what's the point in ever making a tier 3 watchtower, right? So even though there are tiers in the game for certain things, we don't want to use that like everywhere, because that's not interesting, right? It's not interesting to us to just have these linear flat upgrades. So I think what we want to do is, when we come around to revamp the Intel side of the game, we want to provide more interesting options, right? To address this problem that you've mentioned here with the tier 1 watchtowers not being sufficient. Matt, we probably want to make this the last one because
Sure.
we do have,
yeah. So let's make it a good one.
and good means it's easy, right? Let's make it easy.
Actually, let's talk about this because this came up in our Discord today.
Yep.
Since we already have new textures added on existing models, this comes from Calmoir, by the way.
Sure.
Since we already have textures added onto existing models, I think they're talking about the tier upgrades. Would it be technically possible to have the faction skins swap if you capture a vehicle? And to that, I say, I think it's a cool idea. I think, from my perspective, the only question is it just so that it matches your faction? That's my question. What do you think, Mark?
Yeah, I think that's their. It's more of my understanding of it is that it's a +1. Like it's like a visual feature that they just find would be neat, which I agree would be cool. Like in the game feedback channel, someone posted a render that they made of the Colonial battle tank and how they painted it with the Warden paint. And I don't know. I personally think it's cool, right? It's kind of like, why not? We captured
Yeah.
this. It's kind of like when you capture a factory in CNC, those like old Command and Conquer games. The tanks and all the buildings turn into your color.
Yeah.
It kind of reminds me of that, right?
And then you have like green like nod vehicles. If I remember
Yeah.
correctly, yeah.
Yeah.
Or like obelisks that are green.
Yeah.
All right. If that's everything, we're gonna bring it to an end. HB, take us away.
Well, thank you very much, everybody, for joining us. We are here every second Tuesday at 2 p.m. EST on twitch.tv/Foxhole Game. We are also obviously live on Discord, which is discord.gg/Foxhole, so you can join us there, ask us questions there, give us feedback. So, for instance, somebody was complaining that the colors of the stockpiles were too faint, you couldn't see them. So yeah, that's feedback. We can definitely take a look at them, change those things. If not, we're gonna be archiving this dev stream on YouTube, which is youtube.com/Foxhole, and then that we're gonna try to answer some of the questions in the comments below. So thank you very much, but please join us live so you can ask questions live as well. If not, we have the Reddit, r/Foxhole Game, and then there's a lot of people talking there. So please join us there. And next week, if you're in the mood for something that is different, that is not Foxhole related, me, Matt, and Max, we get together at night on next week's Wednesday at 6 p.m. on twitch.tv/Clapfoot. It's a different Twitch. And we talk about anything that is not Foxhole related.
So join us for that. And I think that's going to do it for today. Should we expect a devlog next week, Mark?
I hope so.
Okay. just throwing it out there. So look for a devlog next week, and we'll be back here in 2 weeks with more cool stuff, including updates for Dead Harvest.
No, not next week. Yeah, no.
Not next week?
Yeah.
Oh, okay, so no Dead Harvest next week.
Probably
I
not.
opened my mouth. All right, everybody, stay foxy.